man, that one's too
Well,
short.
I'm still dancing, you know? It's hard to stop.
Good morning, Dan.
Hey, what's happening? How are you?
I'm trying to figure out the lighting in my new space for all of our viewers. I have a
Yeah.
new apartment and the lighting is not as good as the old one.
I thought you were going for like gradient lighting or something.
Gradient lighting. Gradient lighting's are gradients trending
See?
again.
I know, I see that.
What's
I see that.
old is new again.
It's like circa 10 years ago or so, you know?
Yes. But happy Friday.
Yeah, likewise. Doing
Did you
well.
survive the Austin ice storm last week?
We did. Some of our trees weren't so lucky, or some branches on them, but you know, it's like driving around, it's like everyone has branches out in their yard and everything else. So kind of crazy around here.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Man,
But,
it was crazy though.
yeah, but no damage or anything. So, you know, can't beat that.
That's
What I like is the Texas weather. So, you know, we had ice and then 4 days later it was like 74 degrees and sunny. People
right.
wearing shorts, so random.
I know. Yesterday it hit 76.
Yeah. It was nice.
I was like, I'm gonna get sunburned if I stay outside.
I know. It's so true. It's so true.
But what do we have going on in research? I haven't been here for a while.
I know, it's been a little bit. So today we have Greg Timpany coming on, and he's going to be talking about Conjoint, Max Diff, and all those fun things.
You say Van Westerndorp, I'm gonna.
No, I won't say it.
Just Conjoint and Max Diff. Forget the other ones. No.
Anybody who has me saying that on their bingo card is not going to be a winner. Well, maybe. I guess I can't roll it out. And then we have some, I guess, some trivia, not really trivia, but things around the Super Bowl. We asked instant answers and who would win,
Ooh, go Chiefs.
What they're most excited about. Oh, cheer, of course, Midwest, it makes sense. And so we'll talk about that, and maybe this will be like the definitive of who's going to win the Super Bowl based on instant answers. So we'll see how reliable this is come Sunday.
Oh, and we can test this will be a good point to discuss instant answers like spread, like question spread of like where you're targeting, because we had an internal discussion and they were like, well, it depends on where these questions are people are answering us.
We can talk about that for sure.
Yes, I think that would be good for all of our viewers out there.
Awesome. Well, let's bring in our guest today. Hey, Greg, welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are we doing today?
We're doing well. So for those who don't know Greg, he is an Insights lead at Dairy Max and consultant and all-around good guy. So Greg, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, it's my pleasure, everybody.
Did you say
Happy
Dairy
Friday.
Max?
Dairy Max, yeah. Dairy Max is one of the, it's about 13 state and regional organizations across the U.S. that promotes dairy. Within Dairy Max, we cover Louisiana, Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, and parts of 3 or 4 other states. Basically, what we do is we kind of promote milk on behalf of about 900 plus family farmers. And you know, it's amazing. This is my first take in this industry, so it's like drinking from a fire hose, learning everything about how farms. We do have a Dairy 101 video series that I've been watching, and it's been fascinating, learning about how dairy, not just milk, but cheese, butter, sour cream, cottage cheese, and so on and so forth, gets from farm to the store and ultimately to your kitchen. So yeah. It's a hoot. It's also fun being back in the consumer space after spending so much time in business to business research. So
yeah, I could imagine. But before the show, we were chatting around innovation in dairy and different things. So I'm still waiting for my single batch milk, that I can buy by the gallon.
The closest I was thinking about that. The closest I think that I have come to that would be I lived in Oregon for 10 years in Tillamook before they were like really, before they were really they're a large conglomerate now. But if you think about like their growth and some of those early days, Tillamook's really it's the go.
Yeah.
Tillamook is indeed the go-to, and some of the things we're going to be talking about here, Conjoint, Max Diff, really do play into the concept of product innovation. That can certainly be a key research driving force behind product innovation. So
yeah, that's a good point. I think What's interesting, we should probably get back on track here. We can go many different
we could just also talk about our favorite brands of cheese and milk.
I think we could talk about Tillamook for a while too, but it's interesting. Like we all make hundreds, if not thousands, of choices per day, and a lot of those are around different products. But what drives that, and a lot of research, Craig, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers know, goes into that. But what I wanted to talk about is Conjoint and Max Diff. So if we talk about Conjoint first, maybe for people that don't know or are just learning about it, what is Conjoint and when can they use it?
Certainly. Well, I'm going to start off since I really see these two techniques as like cousins. They've got similarities but they're still unique in their own way. Right. Both techniques seek to model what's important in the consumer's mind when they're faced with options. And like you said, we live in a market-based economy where there's going to be options. Do I buy chocolate ice cream? Do I buy frozen yogurt? Do I buy the small size? Do I buy the large size? I've only got $4.99 to spend. What am I going to buy? We don't live in the old Soviet era style government controlled economy where you had one option.
Right.
If we only had one option, this would be a moot point. But and my wife will echo this. She's often heard me say that life is a conjoint exercise because we are making these kind of trade-offs.
That's true.
Every day. It could be something as simple as what shirt do I want to wear today? But we're, like you said, Dan, we're making trade-offs, possibly thousands a day. But when we're at the market or we're looking to, buy into a survey platform like Question Pro, or what type of car or cell phone or what type of life insurance policy we want to look at, you're faced with those options. Now, these two techniques, both Conjoint and Max Diff, they're related in the sense that they're at the core. They're both based on experimental design. And what the hell does that mean? In the big picture, it means that a feature set, perhaps in a conjoint exercise, and the levels within each of those features can be randomly displayed, and you don't have to display every possible option, which can run into the thousands to the respondents. But you can still take the information at the end of the day, and with a model behind that, extrapolate out to the market. Both techniques, both Conjoint and Max Diff, do have that experimental design at their core. It increases their efficiency and their respective ability to kind of generalize those results out to the broader population. So again, I see them as cousins. They come from a similar vein, but they're unique in their own ways. So let's jump into Conjoint first.
They're not kissing. Your voice, Greg. I was
like, I've been told that I need to get into radio and doing voiceovers.
I think you need to. I'm not surprised just listening to you now. I'm like, let's go on. Yeah.
Well, I did teach online courses for Research Rockstar for many years. And it was just always just a hoot.
Yeah.
In fact, my first job out of college was in radio. Wasn't what you think, though. They let me on air once. The rest of the time, I'm dialing the phone and saying, "Hey, what songs would you like to listen to?" Making a little survey check mark. So,
nice. Wow.
Research from the beginning.
Woo!
Nice.
Anyway, back to, because we're going to go all over the place if we're not careful here.
Yeah, we got to join. We got to stay alive here.
Welcome to Live with Dan.
Yeah.
What is Conjoint all about? Well, Conjoint really, as a technique, it's the king of the hill when it comes to estimating the importance of features that include price. That's the key differentiator. There are other forms of pricing research, Van Westendorp being my favorite, but we're not going to talk about those right now. Conjoint, and again, there's several variations in the conjoint design, many flavors. It's also commonly called discrete choice modeling. You may hear that lexicon out there. But regardless of what flavor you choose, you're still seeking to measure which elements of a potential service or product offering resonate the most with your audience. That's what we're trying to determine. Now, anytime you start thinking about choice modeling using Conjoint, you literally, as the researcher, have to break down that product or service offering into its component feature set. So you hear two things. You hear features and levels are in the common domain within Conjoint. What are that? When you think of features, that's easy. You're thinking of price, you're thinking of size, you're thinking of number of megapixels on your camera's phone. You're thinking of the HDMI, number of HDMI connections on your computer. You're thinking about two-wheel drive versus four-wheel drive in a car. These are the features. When you dive beneath that, the next thing that we have to think about, what are the levels? Think about price points. Think about sizes of a pizza, of a frozen pizza. Think about whether or not you put pepperoni on that pizza, or extra cheese, or mushrooms. So your pizza toppings would be the feature, and beneath that would be vegetarian, all meat, Hawaiian, different options that you think you might want to take into the marketplace. So we have to consider both of those whenever we're going into a conjoint type research analysis.
Right. So Greg, let's say I do the, I know what kind of pizzas that I want to offer the market. Maybe Certainly. It's a new kind of pizza that's coming out. I have that, and then what do I ask the respondents to rate these two things, and then how does that work?
Well, you're getting ahead of me there, Dan.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say that conjoints most frequently used in the product design phase. So if you've got this great idea for either a new product or a new service offering, and you want to kind of get an idea of what the market thinks about that in a deeper detail. I mean, certainly you can stand up and say, hey, I'm coming up with this new type of trash compactor. Who'd like to buy it? But, realistically, people are going to think about that from the, does it fit in my kitchen? How much does it cost? What's it take to get it set up? So we break down these kind of decisions. And again, if you're in the new product space, or you're thinking about bringing a product into market, or even reformulating an existing product, maybe to better match a competitive product, conjoint is the way to go. What's going to happen is, again, as the researcher, we're going to take and break down all of those features into the respective levels. We're going to program those in. What the respondent will see is a series of tasks. Now, what is a task? A task is going to be, say, 3 different options for cell phones. And each one of these options is going to show a price point. It's going to show maybe a number of megapixels on the camera, an estimated talk time, all of these key things that you would think about when you're looking at a phone. And you're going to be asked to select which one of those options that you're presented with in this task would you choose. Common, we can also add a fourth choice, if you will, say none of these. And Crystal's got a question. Go ahead, Crystal.
Would brand loyalty or brand influence be part of the feature choices because people choose
based on brand? Yes. I've seen research. Gold star for Crystal. I've seen research where they incorporate, a specific brand name. Yeah. You don't always have to do that, but if you think you're in a competitive market space where brand is a key attribute, then you would want to speak to that. Okay. So anyway, you're a consumer and you've been asked to pick, which one of these cell phone options works best for you. You would also be given typically a none of these options. Mm-hmm. So hey, I could look at these 3 and say, nah, none of those really appeal to me. So I'll select that 4th option. Anyway, this task is repeated multiple times, which brings up, a key point in survey design. If you're going down the pathway of either conjoint or a max diff study, you don't want to incorporate too many other questions around it, because these elements, these tasks, these research techniques take additional time and cognitive load on the part of the respondent. You might put some profiling questions around it. You might put a few open-end questions around it, but that's really about it. You wouldn't bury either of these techniques as part of a larger segmentation study. Right. Because it's just too much. We can only ask so much out of the consumer before they give us the middle finger and off they go.
I do that because I can tell now. I can tell now when it's especially if they give the time bar and you suddenly get stuck in a loop where you're just 30% done for the whole time because they keep asking you questions. They're like, oh, you know how to take surveys. Would you like to go down this other route?
True.
Survey fatigue is a whole nother thing, I think.
We'll talk about that on another topic, but just thinking about these two techniques, you definitely don't want to wrap a lot around them. Keep it simple. What's the power behind Conjoint? Let's focus on that for a second. Well, it requires consumers to make a choice between various options, which again is as realistic a method that we can put out in the play, and trying to understand what drives a consumer's choice. It recognizes that price is a major component of most decisions. These typically, you wouldn't apply a conjoint exercise or a max diff exercise to the kind of things you see right at the checkout register. The magazine,
not
the
the
gum.
impulse buys and all that.
Exactly. This stuff does not relate to impulse buys. It relates to something where you would expect the consumer to think about it. It could be a diamond ring for a wedding. It could be a house. It could be a European vacation. It could be a medical insurance plan. There used to be a day when certain jobs offered you multiple types of insurances that you could select from. How much do you want to pay for this? And that's where the whole conjoint exercise really first hit me in the face. I'm going, I've got 8 different potential life insurance or health insurance options I can choose from. How much do I want to pay for these different features and different levels? So anyway, conjoint as a whole, again, it recognizes that price is the major component. It's not the only component, but it is a major one. And they're asked to make that trade-off. So now another superpower that conjoint offers, and this is where I think
conjoint superpowers.
This is where the geeks in the room can really find it fascinating, is you get the ability to estimate a share of preference based on varying feature levels. You can embed a competitive product as part of the process. So you can kind of say, how does my ideal product compare to, say, Acme's best product in the marketplace? So you can get a direct competitive intelligence read there as well. Fascinating aspect to it. But it definitely allows you to kind of estimate and get an estimation of what the market sees as the optimal product, and how it compares to what you can produce. Now, again, this is only one part of the whole product process. It gives you an idea of what the market thinks, but of course you have to still do your homework and say, can we source the product given logistic problems? Can we price it? Can we get this thing and still make a margin on it? So you have to do your research internally. What conjoint does is it gives you the consumer or the market's perspective on what you think might be an optimal product. Now, when I'm looking at a conjoint analysis, again, I have to say Question Pro does this better than most platforms out there. It makes it easy to read. You're looking at the importance ranking. Again, what you would expect to see in any conjoint analysis is a slate of features across those features. Some are going to be the most important, and some are going to be way down the list. Typically, when I'm building out a conjoint, I'll keep it to maybe 5 to 6, 5 to 7 features, and then of course varying levels within that. And that's realistic because there's only so many features that a consumer can actually base their decision on. Right. We can talk about that in a whole nother time, but you can also use, interestingly enough, you can use max diff to flow into a conjoint, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But anyway, you're looking at the, how do these features rank out? What's the top dog? What's at the bottom? You're looking at how those levels within those features shake out. And then again, you're looking at, what's my optimal product based on the responses, and maybe how that optimal product looks compared to any competitive products.
Right.
So again, to wrap up, conjoint is a powerful technique. It's based on a deep experimental design, which brings all of the power of that into play. In other words, you may have, depending on the number of features and levels that are involved, potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of possible combinations. You do not need to show the respondents all of those to be able to make.
To be able talk about survey fatigue.
The respondent only needs to know what they need to know.
That's where the efficiency comes in. It allows you to only show a slate of those, a smaller slate, but yet still be able to maximize the amount of information you're getting out of the process.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And what I love about it is at the end of the day or end of the survey, I get, hey, this is the best profile. I need that large pizza with pepperoni and for $10 or whatever it might be. And it's clear, like you have the data to back that up, so then you can put that into the product delivery cycle and so forth.
Exactly. You can go back to your product people and say, we can tell you exactly what you need to make.
Yep.
Right.
So
now, while how we talk about this in like fun fantasy land that product people do that or that researchers do that. Do you think that there are not enough, like, as somebody who's worked in a lot of startups who've never done product market fit and research, is this like what percentage of companies you think make decisions on new products that go to market without research?
Well, I mean,
or don't listen to it?
You can probably say, 50, 60%. But what you can say, and you can see this, and I saw an article the other day, I will have to go back and find out what the source is, but, tens of thousands of products are brought to market every year. At the end of that year or 1 year on, a small percentage of them are actually still on the shelf.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Again, there's been studies in the past, and you can look this up wherever you choose to, but the key fact is that a majority of product launches fail. And they may fail even with some solid research behind them. Why? Because, consumer preferences do change. We've seen change during the pandemic. People are doing things differently than they did before. So there's some macro level factors that could easily influence or override what we saw in the research. But that being said, if market research's primary purpose is to reduce risk in decision making, then Conjoint, Max Diff certainly drive that. They reduce the risk inherent with any decision making. Before I run out of time, I am going to give you a few minutes on Max Diff.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's dive into Max Diff.
I know everyone heard my warning beforehand.
I love Max Diff, and it's short for maximum difference scaling. I can't begin. The Louvier, I think, is the originator of Max Diff.
Yep.
What does it allow you to do? Well, it allows you to test the importance of a variety of things without the potential bias that a technique like Likert scaling has. What kind of things can we test? That's a fantastic question. Thank you, Crystal, for bringing that up. I've used Max Diff personally to test value propositions, including those of our competitors, potential product features, where levels were not necessarily the prime focus. Potential menu options, and this was a really fun one. I did some work for an agency way down south many years ago, and fast food, QSR restaurants were one of their big clientele, and frequently did a lot of work for a national burger chain. And I tested salads, I tested burgers, I tested breakfast options, and we would do a slate of potential burgers, for example. Potential salads. I had no idea how many creative ideas people could come up with salads, but we had to help them whittle that down. And we always started off with a Max Diff exercise, where basically, the consumer or the respondent has to pick from, say, a group of 4 items, what's most important to them or most likely or preferred, and what is least likely or least important.
Right.
From a set of, say, 3 or 4 options, then that gets repeated multiple times. Just like Conjoint, we have tasks, and each task the respondent has to choose what's most important or what's least important, or most satisfied, least satisfied. What does it do? Again, it's based on an experimental design, just like Conjoint. So you don't have to show all of the potential feature options that you're looking at, or value propositions, for example, or hamburger types, or salads. You don't have to show all of them to everybody in order to get a solid read of what's most perceived to be most important or most likely to purchase, and what's least likely to purchase. Getting back to this potential menu option thing with Wendy's, that's the design, or the QSR that I was working with. It was fascinating. We did this work and we presented the results to them. Then, as my family was traveling across Texas, mind you, the middle of, I think we were in Midland, stopped off at a Wendy's, and lo and behold, on their menu was the salad I told them that they should choose.
Look at that. Nice.
Is that the most satisfying thing, to see your work, your recommendations?
As a researcher, that is one hell of a vote of confidence. It was fantastic.
Did you take like a selfie with it? You're like, this.
Yeah, you're like, this is mine. Yeah.
No, I didn't. But it's a memory that I've had. But hey, why do we want to do this anyway? it's important to be able to get a read on consumer preferences in an unbiased way.
Yeah.
One of Max Diff's superpowers, if you will, is it allows us as the researcher to avoid the kind of straight line bias commonly seen with other techniques such as Likert scaling.
Mm-hmm.
I in classes I've taught, I bring up the example of a digital camera, and this digital camera might have 5 or 6 potential features, and the respondent may say everything's extremely important.
Yep.
And we see this all the time, particularly in product related or service related research. And when you get that kind of straight lining, and particularly if it takes up a large percentage of the responses, you're not going to be able to differentiate what's most important.
Right. Everything's going to be 3.5 or 3.7. And you're like, what do I do? Yeah.
And another cool thing about Max Diff is if you're involved in any international research, is it fits very well across different cultures.
Oh.
And I can tell you this because Likert scaling, where you strongly disagree to strongly agree, or vice versa, different cultures, particularly Asian and Latin American, tend to not use all points on the scale. So there's inherent bias. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's a cultural phenomenon that's well documented out in the research. Moving away from Likert scaling, for example, and going to a Max Diff or some of the other techniques out there minimizes that potential for cultural bias.
Yeah.
So
I think to your point with the superpower of Max Diff is you get like clear preference, right? Whereas if you just ask these like in a big matrix question with different, you're going to get the 3.5 and like, well, what do I do from here? This doesn't help me. So
exactly.
it is yeah.
One of the things I've done with Max Diff, again, Question Pro, I'm going to give you a shout out to that platform. It gives you some really strong visual reporting, so you can easily and clearly see which of the features, for example, is most important to consumers, and then you can filter that. You may have other questions in your survey that are, your key segments, for example, age or demographics, gender, age, etc. You can filter the responses to the Max Diff by some of those other variables. You can also use Max Diff, and if as huge a fan of segmentation research as I am, I love to bring in Max Diff up front as my basis for segmentation, because you've got such clear delineated preference data.
Right.
Again, I've used this in the past for not just menu options. I used it when I was at Global Knowledge, which is an IT training company. I took a look at our key value proposition and those of about 7 or 8 of our key competitors, and did this in a Max Diff format.
That's
where they selected, here's 3 value propositions, which one most resonates with you, which one least resonates.
Right.
So that's or potential messaging items. You can test it if you've got multiple messaging headlines, if you will. Great use of Max Diff's power there. I did a project for Tableau, the software company, where we went out with potential product integrations that we were considering, and our audience there was software developers.
Right.
What kind of integrations would you like Tableau, or what kind of other platforms would you like Tableau to be able to integrate with? Max Diff, again, was ideally perfect. Price was not a concern there, so I didn't even think about Conjoint.
Right. Plus, what's great about Max Diff too is those developers or whoever they'd want everything, right? So this gives them a clear no, you need to pick most important or least important. What do you need? So
exactly. You get back to realizing that in life we're making choices. We're always going to be making a choice.
Right.
And from the research perspective, both of these techniques are some of the most powerful techniques available to us currently in terms of understanding how people make choices. You can use both of these techniques, Conjoint and Max Diff. Again, you can filter them by segment. You can filter them by your demographic breakdown. You can filter them by geography. So you can cut these things in many different ways. So, for example, if you've got, millennial parents, and you want to focus on that as group, if that's your audience du jour that you need to talk to, you can focus on that, highlight those, and see what they think is most preferred and least preferred, or how much they would be willing to pay for a product with certain slate of features compared to another product. So,
or compared to millennials without children and single and
there you go.
And no pets.
Yeah, well, that's good.
There you go.
That's good.
So,
Greg, I was going to give a quick plug here to the certification, and I just want to make sure that we plug this in here. The certification. So we do have a certification at Question Pro, or a course that Greg actually helped develop, and it's called Discrete Choice, obviously, and pricing models. So if you want to know more about this, it's a free course we have here. So go to certification.questionpro.
Do I get to hear Greg's calming voice as I go through the course?
I wish.
Extra for that. I think that's extra.
I may do that next time around. This is all a written course, but it's sort of a compendium of what I've learned about these techniques over the years and how I've put them into play. What differentiates, again, there are other techniques for pricing research. Just as a plug to Van Westendorp, you may hear that out there. Price sensitivity meter is another name for that. That's really good if you've got a product that's been in the market, people are aware of it, and you just want to get a read on what the optimal pricing looks like for that product. You're not testing features. You're not testing different levels. You've already got a product that's in play.
Yep.
But you want to get a read on, am I pricing it properly compared to my competition, for example? That's where the price sensitivity meter comes in. Gives you an idea of when people perceive it to be too cheap, what kind of range people are willing to accept it in, and what price range is it getting to be too expensive. The clear example is you're going out to buy that diamond ring for that special lady in your life, and you say, diamond ring for $200. I don't know. That just seems to be too cheap. On the other hand, diamond ring for $10,000 going, that's way over my budget.
Yeah,
so
that's
where that pricing research comes in. It kind of gives you what's that optimal pricing range. Right. And again, you can filter this by your key segments and subsegments. So,
maybe answer this in like 10 seconds, or maybe a one-word answer, Greg. Do you feel like when in an inflationary time like we're at now, should Van Westendorp or Garber Granger be used more? Do you think to help optimize price, or do you think it's kind of an outlier because it's hard with some of the other economic factors happening?
I would certainly keep it in, because the techniques are easy for respondents to do.
Right.
But you may need to weave some other questions into your survey, talking about where people's heads are at in terms of inflation, what kind of situation they're facing it.
Got it.
Because Zig Ziglar, the great orator and educator who grew up during the Great Depression, would say, hey, there's still people out there that are taking vacations and eating well and going out and doing things. So not everybody's faced, even in this inflationary time, to the same degree. Right. So maybe you incorporate some questions that kind of suss out a little bit more about how the respondent feels about inflation and how it's impacting them. And then you can compare that with the results on the pricing tests.
Interesting. I like that. That's great. That's great. Greg, do you want to stick around? We're going to go over some Super Bowl data here if you want to.
I've got a couple of minutes before I have to jump.
So. It won't take very long. We asked, so people across the United States here on who they thought they would win and what they're going to be watching and so forth. So let's just spend a little bit of time here. Let's add this to the stream. All right. So what event are you most interested in for next week?
Valentine's Day just got.
So maybe, your diamond ring example, Greg, was pretty appropriate here, I think. Valentine's Day. But people are more, we surveyed 300 people. This is our instant answers product, which is a Slack integration, gets answers within minutes. And so Valentine's Day was 43%. The Super Bowl was 57%. So more interested in the Super Bowl.
Now, of course, as a researcher, we should come back and say, how does this break out by gender, by age, married versus single?
Oh my God.
True. That's true. Well, this is quick and dirty.
These are instant answers. WOW does a correct spread right across the U.S.
Yeah, it's balanced.
It's balanced. I still think that Valentine's Day is underrated, first of all, and Oregon became a state day. So you can actually do.
So what do we celebrate? Oh my gosh!
I love Valentine's Day. It's my favorite holiday. But they're not usually in the same week. So also, if you think about like, oh, I have to spend money on a Super Bowl party and bring out for Valentine's Day, like, which one are you gonna choose?
Yeah, I think there will be the same week now because I added a game in. So.
Oh, yeah. Also, there's a whole movement trying to get it moved to Saturdays, which makes sense. It should be on Saturday.
It does. It does. All right. So, what are you most interested in during the Super Bowl? So, is it halftime show, the game itself, the products or the ads, and then I'm not interested in the Super Bowl. So 42%.
I thought the ads would be more popular than the halftime.
Yeah, I thought so too. But maybe
Rihanna,
maybe get some of these people not interested. Maybe it's some of them. But 42% said the game. The halftime show was 42%. So people want to see Rihanna, I suppose. But yeah, kind of interesting.
Now,
go ahead. Yeah.
I was just saying, maybe since I've watched so many Super Bowls over my life, and that I don't really care about most of the modern artists that are out there, that it's definitely the ads for me.
Yeah.
Because being in marketing, that's kind of what we do for a living, right? We like to know what's going on in the ad space.
So the next one is, get your dollars ready because it's who do you think will win the Super Bowl? So if you go with this,
excuse me,
the Eagles is, 54%. I guess 13% didn't know what in the heck we were talking about, and then 32% said the Chiefs. So if you can bet and you want to do that, looks like the Eagles are the
absolutely
at least the crowd favorite here.
I'm going to pull for the underdog because I just don't particularly care for the Eagles.
I wouldn't say the Chiefs are the underdogs.
They're both. According to Vegas, they are, I guess, but.
But
yeah, so this is it. So looks like the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl. See if this holds up. I actually think the Eagles will win. I'm going to say like 24-17, something like that. It'll be
with most of these games. I mean, if it's a good game, particularly from the advertiser perspective, because if it's a good game, people are going to continue to watch it longer, perhaps through the entire game.
Right.
If it's a blowout, they're done at halftime. Off to something else.
Yeah.
Off to worrying about why they can't get reservations for Valentine's Day.
See, there you go.
And I was going, we're doing intermittent fasting, so I tend to eat earlier. I don't wait till late in the night to eat dinner anymore. And I'm going, God, maybe I can get like a 4:00 reservation at Fleming's. No, nothing available.
No.
4:00. I always tell my friends I have some friends in town this weekend who live in a small town in Iowa, so they don't have like Resi or open tape, like they don't need it. And she was like, "Oh, can we go to this like hit like speakeasy?" And I was like, "We could go at 5." So we're going at 5:30. I was like, "That's it. Those are 5 or 1 a.m. Those are your options."
Yeah, so 5.
Lordy.
Nice.
Yeah. Then otherwise, you're like, in the places like Spain and Portugal and Italy where they eat dinner at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, ooh, interesting. Anyway, we could do a whole study on
yes. Yeah. We could go off.
Anyway.
Maybe a random show one time, Greg, where we just talk about anything that comes up.
That sounds good. Well, hey, I do want to say thank you.
Any of the shows Dan and I do by ourselves.
That's true.
Thank you both for letting me geek out on Conjoint and Max Diff, and definitely looking forward to the next time we get a chance to do one of these. We'll talk about maybe a little bit more about how you design them, how you incorporate them into surveys, and
that sounds great. Awesome.
All right,
thanks, Greg. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And we'll talk to you here soon.
One thing before we go, Dan.
Yeah.
And I know it's only February, but he got me thinking. Don't forget X Day.
X Day. I knew you were going to say that. X Day, October 26th. Thursday,
October 25th and 26th. One day.
Oh, we're doing it 2 days. That's right.
One day of inspiration. And
mark that down.
I've already started. There has been some conniving behind the scenes on a couple fun like talking points for you, but I'll tell you later.
Yeah. Surprise me later. Yeah.
Well, do you have anything else coming up on the research side?
Not that I can think of.
Oh, Nick has a webinar.
Nick has a webinar later this month.
In March.
On March. Okay.
And our team, Danielle or Mark, will drop that into the comments. We also have a CX webinar coming up on February 27th with 6 of our commentators
Commentators.
From the CX Trend Guide that we released just last month. And there is a workforce webinar for their newly released study about diversity and inclusion in the workplace.
Yeah, that one's interesting. Definitely sign up for that. So drop that in the comments, Mark or Danielle.
You hear us?
Yeah, can you hear us? Are you out there? Hopefully you can hear us. Yeah. We'll assume you're there.
Awesome. What do we got going on next week?
Next week is a surprise, so I'll unveil that early next week. But yeah,
awesome. It's going to be awesome. Okay.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate it. Thanks, Crystal.
Bye.